Noam Chomsky, the ever-so-cheery intellectual, doesn't mince words. Known for his sharp critiques and unfiltered opinions, Chomsky has always been a voice that challenges the status quo. His insights often cut through the noise, offering a perspective that is both enlightening and at times unsettling. In his 1994 book World Orders, Old and New, he tackles the rosy narrative of a fresh start after the Cold War. The book delves deep into the political and economic structures that persisted despite the supposed end of an era. Chomsky meticulously dissects the idea that the world had entered a new phase of peace and cooperation. Spoiler alert, it's all a bit of a sham. The promises of a new beginning were, in Chomsky's view, nothing more than a facade. The same power dynamics, the same struggles for dominance continued to play out on the global stage, just under a different guise. Chomsky argues that the New World Order is less of a fresh coat of paint and more of the same old wallpaper, just with a few strategic touch-ups. The superficial changes were meant to placate the masses, to give the illusion of progress, while the underlying issues remained unaddressed. Chomsky, never one to shy away from a good conspiracy theory, or just pointing out the bleeding obvious, argues that the powers that be haven't really changed. The same elites, the same institutions continued to wield power, often behind closed doors, away from the public eye. The Cold War might be over, but the hunger for control and dominance, still alive and kicking. The geopolitical chess game never really ended, it just shifted players and strategies. The fall of the Berlin Wall was symbolic, but the real battles for influence and power continued unabated. It's like that old pair of sweatpants you just can't bring yourself to throw away. Comfy, familiar, and probably best left in the back of the drawer. The old world order, with all its flaws and familiarities, was never truly discarded. It lingered, reshaped, and repurposed, but fundamentally the same. The Cold War, a time of suspicion, paranoia, and really catchy protest songs. But according to Chomsky, it was also a fantastic excuse for some pretty shady behavior. Both the US and the Soviet Union, those champions of freedom and justice, allegedly, used the whole "we're on the brink of nuclear annihilation" thing to justify some questionable choices. Think of it like this. You and your nemesis are having a staring contest. You're both convinced the other one is about to unleash a world of hurt. So you start stockpiling weapons, building bunkers, and generally acting like the world is about to end. Meanwhile, you're both ignoring the fact that your actual houses are falling apart and your goldfish are looking distinctly unwell. So the Berlin Wall falls, everyone breathes a collective sigh of relief, and we all start planning our vacations to newly capitalist Moscow. But hold your horses, comrade. Chomsky's here to rain on our parade. He argues that the collapse of the Soviet Union didn't magically erase the power dynamics that had been brewing for centuries. The US, now the world's undisputed superpower, had a golden opportunity to, not be a jerk. But old habits die hard. And the US, apparently, never met a foreign policy intervention it didn't like. It's like finding out your childhood bully has become a motivational speaker. Sure, they might be wearing a suit now, but deep down, they're still a jerk. Remember the Gulf War? Saddam Hussein, oil fields, CNN broadcasting live from a bunker. It was a time when the world watched in real time as a superpower flexed its military might. The images of tanks rolling through the desert, soldiers in combat gear, and the ominous plumes of smoke from burning oil fields are etched into our collective memory. Good times. Chomsky uses the Gulf War as the ultimate example of New World Order hypocrisy. He points out how the narrative was carefully crafted to justify military intervention. The US government, under George H.W. Bush, painted a picture of a noble mission to liberate Kuwait and restore peace. But was that the whole story? The US, claiming to be all about liberating Kuwait and protecting freedom, just happened to flex its military muscles and secure its oil interests in the process. The liberation of Kuwait was a convenient cover for a more strategic objective, ensuring control over one of the world's most vital resources. The military operations were as much about securing oil fields as they were about freeing a nation. It's like that friend who borrows your car to help you move, then returns it with an empty gas tank and a parking ticket. The US intervention left Kuwait with a heavy military presence and a reminder of who holds the power. The analogy highlights the self-serving nature of the intervention, where the helper benefits more than the one being helped. Chomsky argues that the Gulf War wasn't about freeing the Kuwaiti people. It was about maintaining US dominance in the region. The aftermath of the war saw a continued US military presence in the Middle East, ensuring that American interests were safeguarded. The Kuwaiti civilians, while freed from Iraqi occupation, found themselves under the shadow of another powerful force. And let's not forget the wholesaling the war thing. The media played a crucial role in shaping public perception. News anchors, politicians, and propaganda worked in tandem to create a narrative that justified the war. The constant coverage and the framing of events were designed to garner public support and legitimize the military actions. The media, spoon-feeding US carefully curated narratives, played a starring role in this whole production. Journalists and news outlets became the mouthpieces of the government, delivering stories that aligned with the official stance. The headlines, the broadcasts, and the reports were all part of a larger script aimed at controlling the narrative. It's enough to make you wonder, if a war happens in the desert and no one's there to film it, did it really happen? The presence of media crews ensured that every moment was captured and broadcasted, making the war a spectacle for the world to see. The question underscores the power of media in shaping reality and the perception of events. Section 5. The price of power. Marginalized voices speak out. Here's the thing about all this talk of world orders and global dominance. It's really easy to forget about the little guy, the people actually living in the countries being invaded, sanctioned, and generally messed with. Chomsky, bless his cynical heart, makes sure to shine a light on the folks who usually get relegated to the footnotes of history. He argues that the quest for power always comes at a cost, and it's often the most vulnerable who end up footing the bill. Think about it. When was the last time you saw a politician shed a tear for the innocent civilians caught in the crossfire of their grand geopolitical chess game? Section 6, the economic machine fueling global inequality. Now let's talk about money, honey. Because what's a good world order without a healthy dose of economic exploitation? Chomsky argues that the global economic system is rigged, and guess what? The house always wins. It's like playing Monopoly with someone who insists on being the banker and also happens to own all the best properties. Chomsky argues that economic policies, often crafted by those who benefit most from them, serve to reinforce existing power structures. It's a vicious cycle. The rich get richer, the poor get poorer, and the rest of us are left wondering why we even bother playing the game. Section 7, the illusion of choice. Democracy under scrutiny. Democracy, that shining beacon of hope, or is it? Chomsky, ever the optimist, not questions whether we really have as much say in things as we like to think. He argues that real power doesn't reside in the hands of the people, but rather in the hands of, the powerful. Think corporations, lobbyists, and anyone with enough money to make a politician's ears perk up. It's like that moment you realize the choice you're making is actually no choice at all. You can have the red pill or the blue pill, but both will lead you right back to the same system. Fun times. Section 8. Chomsky's challenge, a call to action. So what's the solution to all this doom and gloom? Well, if you were hoping for a nice, neat answer, you've come to the wrong place. Chomsky, in his infinite wisdom, doesn't really offer a step-by-step guide to dismantling the global power structure, but hey, at least he's honest about it. What he does offer is a challenge. He urges us to be critical thinkers, to question the narratives we're fed, and to never, ever take anything at face value. It's like your mum always said, if everyone jumped off a bridge, would you jump too? Spoiler alert. The answer is no, especially if Chomsky's the one suggesting it. Section 9, conclusion. Unmasking power, seeking alternatives. World orders old and new is not exactly a light beach read. It's a dense, thought-provoking, and often depressing look at the state of global affairs. Chomsky delves deep into the intricacies of power dynamics, exposing the often hidden mechanisms that govern our world. It's a dense, thought-provoking, and often depressing look at the state of global affairs. But it's also a necessary one. Chomsky, like that friend who always tells you the truth, even when you don't want to hear it, forces us to confront some uncomfortable truths about the world we live in, but it's also a necessary one. Chomsky, like that friend who always tells you the truth, even when you don't want to hear it, forces us to confront some uncomfortable truths about the world we live in. He reminds us that the fight for a more just and equitable world is an ongoing one, and it's up to us to pick up the mantle and keep fighting. Chomsky, like that friend who always tells you the truth, even when you don't want to hear it, forces us to confront some uncomfortable truths about the world we live in. He reminds us that the fight for a more just and equitable world is an ongoing one, and it's up to us to pick up the mantle and keep fighting. His work is a call to action, urging us to not just passively accept the status quo, but to actively seek out and implement alternatives, forces us to confront some uncomfortable truths about the world we live in. He reminds us that the fight for a more just and equitable world is an ongoing one, and it's up to us to pick up the mantle and keep fighting. His work is a call to action, urging us to not just passively accept the status quo, but to actively seek out and implement alternatives. This means questioning authority, challenging oppressive systems, and standing in solidarity with those who are marginalized. He reminds us that the fight for a more just and equitable world is an ongoing one, and it's up to us to pick up the mantle and keep fighting. His work is a call to action, urging us to not just passively accept the status quo, but to actively seek out and implement alternatives. This means questioning authority, challenging oppressive systems, and standing in solidarity with those who are marginalized. It's a daunting task, but one that is crucial for the betterment of society, and it's up to us to pick up the mantle and keep fighting. His work is a call to action, urging us to not just passively accept the status quo, but to actively seek out and implement alternatives. This means questioning authority, challenging oppressive systems, and standing in solidarity with those who are marginalized. It's a daunting task, but one that is crucial for the betterment of society. So go forth, dear reader, and make Chomsky proud. So go forth, dear reader, and make Chomsky proud. Or at least try not to make the world a worse place. Baby steps, people, baby steps. Remember, every small action counts, and together we can create a ripple effect that leads to significant change. Or at least try not to make the world a worse place. Baby steps, people, baby steps. Remember, every small action counts, and together we can create a ripple effect that leads to significant change. Let's strive to be the change we wish to see in the world, one step at a time.